I am Jacqui Hayes, Archivist and Records Manager with Limerick City and County Council, and I'm delighted to be asked to tell our story of digital preservation in Limerick. Digital preservation is certainly a developmental curve with developmental milestones along the way to a maturity level. So I hope you can appreciate the analogy, and sorry about the scary baby, it's still a Halloween vibe. In Limerick Archives Service, it is still very early days with digital preservation, but we are on the developmental path and are probably still crawling. But as you know, crawling is a really important developmental milestone in human growth and development. It is very difficult to develop good physical coordination, including visual processing, if you skip the crawling phase. So while progress is early in Limerick, we are going in the right direction. Just for some context, as a local authority archive service, we have responsibility under Section 80 of the Local Government Act 2001 to provide for the preservation of and access to both local authority records and archives. So while paper and analogue records are still very much with us, digital approach to records management and archives has been a core part of our work since 2008, 13 years ago, when we invested in a major digitisation project. At the time, there were very few examples in Ireland of similar projects to provide digital access to analogue material. At the time, however, UCD had set up the Irish Virtual Research Library and Archive, the IVRLA Digitisation Project, in January 2005, as a means really to increase and facilitate access to UCD's cultural heritage repositories through the adoption of digitisation technologies. They kindly made their specifications and processes publicly available. I was very conscious at the time of the heavy cost of digitisation, and I wanted to do this once to the highest standard that we could afford. So I leaned heavily on the IVRLA's documentation to formulate our own specification for tender to outsource the digitisation process. Their descriptive standards, the concept of a master and surrogate copies, recommended preservation formats were enormously helpful in addressing major areas of risk and ensuring the data was captured at the highest quality possible at the time. So since 2008, we have continued to add to the digital archive. So the majority of the popularly accessed collections in Limerick Archives are now available online on Limerick City and County's website, limerick.ie. These include local authority record series such as minutes of Limerick City Council and Limerick County Council, records of predecessor bodies such as Board of Guardians, minute books, and a range of private collections donated to the archives, for example, records of the Chamber of Commerce. This includes a large oral history archive, which is fully available on our website. And we also host a range of digital exhibitions, videos, and publications, all produced by the archive service. These include exhibitions on Limerick lace, the bacon industry, the decadent centenaries, and so on. So the digital archive now stores 1.3 terabytes of data. Limerick City and County Council's own archives is the largest category, followed by private papers, our projects, and audio. Our master copies are mainly in JPEG and TIFF, while our access copies are in compressed and watermarked PDF. We still use external storage devices as our storage medium, and 3 copies are maintained at all times. A cyclical program of migration replaces the older devices, as they do and have failed. All of these are listed in our digital asset register, and this is our fundamental good practice that I think you just live and die by. There have been some changes, as nothing stays constant with digital, and passive preservation is not an option. So the surrogates were originally in compressed déjà vu format. This was an excellent compression format in the era of tiny bandwidth, but it required the user to download a plugin to view. This became unsupportable, and we took a decision in 2018 to convert all the working copies to PDF. The surrogate copies, mainly now in PDF, are now stored on Amazon Cloud as the access copy. So moving on swiftly to born digital records. So our digital preservation developmental curve has reached a significant developmental milestone in tackling this challenge. So just to give you an overview of the data and systems, as a local authority, Limerick City and County Council has lots of systems and repositories that contain digital data. So our networked file shares contain 16.588 terabytes of data in a range of formats. There is actually data on these file shares from the very start of information technology in the council, which is around 1994. We even have a text file from 1986. So just to give you an example of the range of systems that we also have in the council, all containing data. Just to mention a few: Exchange, our email system; CRM, our content management system; Aggresso, our payment system; our human resources system core; IDOC, which manages planning applications; iHouse, which manages housing applications. We have Cora, project management systems; GIS systems. I could go on. We have lots of systems, just to give you some context. So between the file shares and the systems, we have a lot of data and a lot of formats. So the most common format is actually JPEG. And these systems, these formats, they reflect the wide scope of local authority functions and services, which really range from cemetery management, housing, roads, economic development, climate adaptation, libraries, sport, festivals, register of electors, to just name a few. Our ICT and digital strategy colleagues manage these systems, so they are major stakeholders in the development of an embryonic digital preservation strategy for born digital records, and in advocacy for resources and in the selection of digital preservation tools, formats, and storage. So many of these formats and records must be kept permanently for legal, evidential, or historical purposes. Others must be destroyed, especially for compliance with GDPR. The National Retention Policy for Local Authority Records is the Bible for retention in local government. To make a start on the management of this data as records, the LITe Programme was initiated in 2018 with members from Archives and Records Management and ICT Digital Strategy to move away from the ungoverned mess of the file shares. The system has taken 3 years to build and migrate data of value to SharePoint Online. While the primary motivation was certainly business efficiency and compliance, one of the key principles was that the LITe programme would bring light to digital darkness and would lay the foundations for digital preservation. LITe set out to build an EDRMS based on SharePoint Online with records management plugins. This reflects the reality that bespoke EDRMS systems have been overtaken by Microsoft 365 and its suite of products: OneDrive, SharePoint Online, Teams, Exchange, Stream, etc. No one is really selling or buying anything else for records management, and whatever its deficiencies, its historical deficiencies as a records management system, SharePoint really is the only game in town, and Microsoft are setting the tone and agenda for information governance. This is a major challenge, as a recent DPC paper, the EDRMS Preservation Toolkit, refers to the challenge of the preservation of Office 365, and a recent webinar describes the data there in Office 365 and the various repositories, whether it's Teams or SharePoint, as tanks without drivers rolling away with all our information. This DPC paper also outlined some potential approaches. One of these, the hands-free approach, probably best describes the LITe programme, where transfer between an EDRMS and the digital archive is automated. A document is created and correctly described and classified by the user, and this is ultimately transferred into the archive without any manual intervention from the archivist or records manager. As part of the LITe programme and fundamental to the delivery of the hands-free approach, a business classification scheme was developed. So this hierarchical schema is based around 43 functions, local authority functions at the highest level, which equate to site collections in SharePoint Online. The scheme itself provides key metadata for function, primary service, and transaction. Users save documents under the third level, the transaction level, and these equate to document libraries in SharePoint Online. Users cannot create document libraries or higher levels themselves. So this third level, the transaction level, utilizes native SharePoint Online features with custom PowerShell code to apply retention at this level, at the third level. All documents within a library share the same retention actions. The system is built at scale and is scripted to provide the retention action for each library. These scripts are known as the retention engine. It was developed by developers as external consultants to the program, to the LITe Programme. The retention engine sits in Azure and at defined intervals crawls the sites for data to find records that meet the criteria for deletion or transfer to the archive based on date last modified. For example, if the retention script is 7 years and delete, a record with date last modified the 4th of November 2015 will be deleted today. It will not go to the recycle bin, it is permanently deleted. And a STUBB is left in place stating the record has been deleted. So this is an example of a STUBB that has been left in place stating this record has been deleted. If the script is, for example, 7 years and archive, a record dated the 4th of November 2015 will be automatically moved to another SharePoint site. This site is called LARC, Limerick Archives. It has a mirror image hierarchical classification schema based on the 43 functions that I mentioned at the highest level. So documents move from the source to the destination with provenance and original structure captured. In the source libraries, the user can still see the document detail with a system icon and a STUBB, indicating that the document has been transferred to the archives. The user can access a HTML link which will offer a copy of the document, but the original has gone to archives. In this example, an item of correspondence has been sent to LARC, and the STUBB will give access to the following view of the document. The record will be stored in LARC as an .msg file under the function, primary service and transaction, which was built as hosts as part of the build. Approximately 70% of the retention periods that I've shown you here are automatic. The balance, the other 30%, will require manual intervention at present, as we were close to a solution here but didn't quite make it. There are gaps. This is not perfect, and we know we have a lot of work to do in terms of making this a fully compliant EDRMS digital preservation model. We still have to generate preservation copies. We have only one copy at this stage. We need to, I think, capture a lot more metadata and define a metadata model. We have to agree on accepted formats and possibly blocking certain formats. We then need to look to our users and carry out user needs analysis. We are a public authority. Archives need to be made available to the public. We will need to start defining and using tools and processes for establishing integrity checking and further appraisal. We actually need to definitely, I think, create a digital preservation policy. So our next steps really are to extend the retention engine across all the sites. It's not looking at all the sites at the moment. We need to extend it across all the sites, evaluate and improve. I have seen nothing in the Office 365 labels and policies approach to records retention, which would encourage me to adopt these as yet. But it is still evolving, and our exit plan is to keep a watching brief on that journey, on Microsoft's journey. I am certain that our next steps will need to be taken with a community. So Limerick is one of the members of a digital record working group led by the DRI, with members from a number of local authorities and universities. and we have commenced work on a digital preservation guidelines policy document. This isn't a sprint, it's probably more like a triathlon, but while we're probably still crawling, I think we're definitely on our way, and we're determined to make it, I think, across the line with our colleagues. I think community and collaboration will be critical to taking more confident steps on our digital preservation continuum and ensuring digital continuity for Limerick and other local authorities. So with that, thank you very much.